right. I have time for us to start. How are y'all doing? That's good. All right, we are tonight ready for 1 Samuel. But the display's not ready. Now, there we go. Ready for chapter 27. What was going on when we last were with David? What had he done? Spared Saul again, this time taking his spear and his water jug. What was Saul's response? Oh, I've been terrible to David. I need to stop chasing him. Did David believe him? Probably not. Yeah, because of what we've got now here in chapter 27. He probably was skeptical. You think he had a right to be skeptical? I think he did. All right. So, chapter 24. David's in the cave. Saul comes in. He takes the corner of his garment. Let Saul know, I had the opportunity. I didn't take it. Chapter 26. He sneaks into the camp where Saul is asleep, takes the water jug, the spear, gets across the valley, lets Saul know what he's done. I had the chance to kill you. I didn't do it. But chapter 27, verse 1. And David said in his heart, now I shall perish someday by the hand of Saul. There is nothing better for me than that I should speedily escape to the land of the Philistines. And Saul will despair of me to seek me any more in any part of Israel. So I shall escape from his hand. See his logic? See his reasoning? He's weary, tired of running. We're reading a chapter. David is living this every day. Is there a difference? We're getting a kind of a through a picture window view, but he's living this daily. How many people are with him? 600 soldiers, and we're told here in this chapter, verse number 2, that the men who were with him, is it verse 2? Yeah, had his household, verse 3. Those men had his household with them. David had his 2 wives with him. So how many people in all? It could have been closer, at least 1,000, between 1,000, 2,000 people. I mean, this is not an easy thing to deal with. You know, we may picture David running from Saul. He's by himself. He's got a handful of men with him. That's not the case. And so David has concluded, the only way I can be safe from Saul is to go to the Philistines. Now, just on the surface of it, does that make sense to you? No, that does not make sense to me either. But as we go through the chapter, it appears that David makes it work. And we'll look at that as we go through. So he seeks refuge with the king of Gath. Remember, the Philistines was a group of cities that were confederated together. Gath was one of them. Ziklag is one of the cities that is under the control of the Philistines. There are others to the north of the map that you see there. But David goes to Gath. The king there is Achish. and he seeks refuge with him. You remember how long he stayed there with him before he finally leaves? Year, and I think it's 4 months, a little over, about 16 months total that David is with them. And while he's there, he asks for a town that he and his soldiers and the families can live in, so he is given Ziklag. And you see it there to the south. There are a couple of places where it might be. I'm not exactly sure where it's located, and this is not, you don't see the borders between Israel and the Philistines, or Judah and the Philistines. Those borders are not like our borders today. They would move back and forth depending on who was the strongest at the time. And so, but Ziklag was often within the area of Judah. In fact, it was a part of the land that God gave to Judah. Now remember, go all the way back to the book of Joshua, and there was something the people failed to do when they went into the land. And they failed to drive out all the Canaanites. And that's the reason the Philistines are still there. And others are still in the area. And so this is land that God had given to Judah, but the Philistines are holding it. David is given that so that he and his families can go. And David has a good reason for doing that. Now, as he tells Achish, I don't have the, why should I live in the royal city with you, verse number 5. I'm not good enough to live in the royal city with you. Give me a city out in the country, and we'll live there. It's almost like David wants to be away from the king so that the king doesn't really know what he's doing. So he can kind of hide some things from him. Not saying that that's what David had in mind, but that certainly does appear that was the case. And so here in this chapter, we're going to see David raiding and annihilating peoples around Ziklag and in that area. If you'll notice on the screen, you'll see the Girzites and the Geshurites, the Amalekites. You see some of the others that are there. Some of these are the people that David will go in, and he will, to use the phrase that Samuel used in 1 Samuel 15, when he told Saul what God wanted him to do with the Amalekites, David will utterly destroy them. He will leave neither man nor woman alive. Now, there are two ways that can be taken. In fact, I've got a couple of commentaries I've been reading as I've been preparing. And in one of those commentaries, David is fulfilling the command that God gave in the law that they were to utterly destroy those Canaanites, drive them out of the land, and annihilate them. And so on that particular view, David is doing God's will, and he is fulfilling God's will. The other one suggests that David was raiding those peoples. He was taking the spoil from those, and by killing everyone, there was nobody left who could go to Achish and say, this is what David is doing. Now, it just so happens that these are not just enemies of the Philistines, but they are enemies of Judah and enemies of God's people. And so the question could come up, who is David really fighting for? If you ask Achish, the king of Gath, the Philistine leader, who would he say David's fighting for? He's fighting for me. But is it possible that David was just using him as a smokescreen, as a place to hide out from Saul as he continues work that will support and and help out the Jewish cause. And he's kind of gaslighting him, yeah, and kind of taking advantage of him. And so David is showing some cunning, and he's showing some deceit, and there's something, though, that's missing. Go back in chapter 26, and how many times did David say something like this? I would not lift my hand against the Lord's anointed. Or, the Lord will repay every man. Or, the Lord has said, or the Lord desires. You see that often in chapter 26. Turn over to chapter 27. How many times did David mention the Lord? Not once. In fact, God is not mentioned in chapter 27. David is leaning on his own understanding, and he's trusting in his own strength and cunning, and that dependence upon God is sorely missing. So here's one of those. I think this is one of those chapters that reminds us that David was a human being just like everybody else. He knew what God would do. He knew what God had promised, and he yet also sees what's going on around him. And sometimes, even though we know the Bible teaches, we walk by, I'll let you finish it, faith and not by sight. If we're honest with ourselves, aren't there times we walk by sight? And we allow the things going on around us to kind of pull us away from where we might ought to be. And I think that's exactly what you're seeing with David in this chapter. Even godly leaders can drift if fear replaces trust. So let me go ahead and put this up. I've entitled the discussion of the chapter Compromise and Consequences. And I'm going to put 3 words up: trust, wisdom, and grace. And as we go through the chapter, I think we will see the importance of these 3 things: trust, wisdom, grace. Obviously, trust in the right being, trust in God. Wisdom that is not my own, but rather depending upon, leaning upon God's wisdom. And then our need for grace because of the fact that we are human and we do at times make the wrong decision. So those are the kind of the 3 thoughts that I want us to be looking for as we go through the chapter. Let me go back to verse 1, because David says something here that's kind of interesting. He said in his heart, literally he said to his heart. David is here talking to himself. Do you ever talk to yourself? Sometimes. Do you listen when you talk to yourself? Have you ever noticed I'm not listening to myself? Well, David's listening. He's like the farmer in Luke 12. My crops have brought forth plentiful. I don't have anywhere to bestow my goods. And so I will say to my soul, soul, you have much goods laid up for many years. David's doing that kind of, he's talking to himself. He's thinking. And he said, I shall perish. Now look at that word. I shall perish. It is the exact same word you find back in chapter 26 and verse number 10. Where David says, as the Lord lives, the Lord shall strike him. Who's he talking about? Saul. Or his day shall come to die, or he shall go out to battle and perish. You remember when we talked about that last week, we said David recognized God is going to take care of Saul. I don't know exactly how it's going to happen, but God will take care of it. And now here he is saying, I'm going to perish. Where is God? Now the answer, of course, he's the same place he always was. But David has forgotten that. And so said, I'm going to perish at the hand of Saul. And there's nothing better than to go to the Philistines. And that way, Saul will quit looking for me, and I will escape out of his hand. So verse 2, he arose, he took his 600 men who were with him. He goes to Achish. He dwelt with Achish in Gath, along with his men, the household of each of his men, David, his 2 wives. And verse 4, this was told to Saul that David had fled to Gath, so he sought him no more. Problem solved. Right? Problem solved. Does that happen to you? Sometimes you start reasoning with, well, if I do this, that'll take care of the problem. And it seems like it works. And I've used that word twice already. I hope you've noticed it. It seems like it works. But the chapter's not over. Verse 5, this is when David goes to Achish. If I have found favor in your sight, let them give me a place in some town in the country that I may dwell there. For why should your servant dwell in the royal city with you? Achish gave him Ziklag that day. And therefore Ziklag has belonged to the kings of Judah to this day. So now not only is Saul not looking for him, but here is land that God had given to Judah that was not under their control, and now from this day on it is under their control. Seems like it's working out pretty good, doesn't it? Saul's not after him anymore. He's gotten land that should have belonged to Judah. Maybe this is going better than I thought it was going to go. Let me bring up a verse. The Bible's like that. No matter what you think, the Bible doesn't change and it doesn't mince words. Proverbs chapter 14, verse 12. Does anybody know what it says just off the top of your head? Let me start it for you. There is a way. Oh, you do know the verse. There is a way that seems right unto a man, but the end thereof are the ways of death. Starts out pretty good. There's a way that seems right. I'll go to the Philistines, Saul quit chasing me, I get Ziklag, that city now belongs to us. It seems right, but the ends thereof are the ways of death. So now we're going to get into a situation where David's, I find, not going to go as well as he thought. But not yet. We're not there yet. Remember, David had gone to Gath before. He'd gone to the Philistines before when Saul was chasing him. Back, what was that, chapter 22? Somewhere around in that. Maybe it's 23, where David feigns madness. It's in verse 21, or chapter 21. And he realizes this is not a good idea. And so he acts crazy, and they run him out, so he gets away from them. Well, he goes right back to those same people, but now things have changed. David has some power, he has some influence, and Achish recognizes he can be useful to me. What could David, with his experience, and 600 soldiers do for Achish? Yeah, anything he wanted them to do. And so look at this as a group of mercenary soldiers that will come to the aid of this Philistine king. That's what he's thinking, and that's the way he plans to use David, and David gives the impression that that's what he's doing. Look at verse 7 is where he tells how long they dwelt in the country of the Philistines. It was a full year and 4 months. And then verse 8, David and his men went up and raided the Gershites, the Geshurites, the Girzites, the Amalekites. These nations were the inhabitants of the land from of old, as you go to Shur, even as far as the land of Egypt. All right, so go back to the map. You want to go back to the map for a moment. Right down at the bottom of that map, you've got the Negev desert. If you're looking at the King James Version, that is often referred to as the South. Why would they call it the South? Because it's the southern part of the area. Yeah, right. But the Amalekites, you see the groups that are there. All of these groups are living in that area. And so David is going down and fighting against them and overcoming them. And don't miss the significance of that phrase in verse number 8. Those nations were the inhabitants of the land from of old. This goes back to the time of the conquest, when Israel did not drive the Canaanites out. What did God say they would become because they did not drive them out? There'll be a thorn in your side. Kind of plays out, doesn't it? I mean, how many times do you see Israel in trouble because of all of these people they did not drive out when God first gave them the land? And that's continuing here. So God's promise to David has been forgotten, and he is trusting in his alliance with the Philistine king, and he's raiding these areas. Verse 9, whenever David attacked the land, he left neither man nor woman alive, but took away the sheep, the oxen, the donkeys, the camel, the apparel, returned and came to Achish. Achish would ask, where have you raided today? David would tell him, and then David verse 11, David would save neither man nor woman alive to bring news to Gath, saying, lest they should inform on us. Thus David did. So David is in a technical way, he's fulfilling the drive them out, destroy these nations. But why is he doing it? It's a self-preservation thing. This way it doesn't get back to Achish as to what is going on. As I was reading this, I kept thinking about a passage or a thing that happens later in the life of David. David had an overwhelming desire late in life to build a temple for God. And what did God say? Yeah, you're not building me a temple because you're a man of war. You are a bloody man. 1 Chronicles 28 verse 3 is one of those passages. This is what comes to mind in that passage, isn't it? Look at what he's doing here. Almost daily, David's going out. He's killing all these people. Now, we can argue, well, God sent Saul out to destroy these people. He did. He did. But David's reasoning, David's purpose is not, I'm going out to fulfill God's will. I'm increasing my holdings. I'm increasing my animals. I'm increasing my influence. And so, that was his answer to Achish. Achish had asked, where have you made a raid today? He said, against.
And David would say, I mean, to me that sounds like he's just telling him what he wants him to hear, not that was what he was doing.
It could be. This is kind of a summary of a number of different things like that. And so Achish would come out to us, where'd you go today? Well, David said, well, this is where I went today. Well, where'd you go today? You went to this. It's kind of put together. I think that's the idea.
It goes to these far away places.
Mm-hmm.
It's not close places.
Mm-hmm.
It's further south.
And let's go back for a moment to the map, because you make a good point. I mentioned earlier the borders are not exact like we have today, but it's something like this right here. All right? And so if you are sitting here as Achish and you hear that David is fighting in these areas right here, you could draw the conclusion that he's fighting against these people. Not just these peoples, but it's in the area that belongs to Judah. And so, if I'm Achish, I'm saying David is weakening my enemies. And David could be not at all concerned about his enemies, but the enemies of these people. Who is David really fighting for? Yeah. All right, David, go ahead.
That's what I was going to say too. David's loyalty to Saul, even though it doesn't mention it, could also be playing in his head. The fact that he's also getting rid of and making life easier for Saul, getting rid of some of that. Like he builds, like you say, he builds his masses of his goods, things like that, pacifying the Philistines, making life easier for Saul. Saul doesn't have to deal with those, but he's sort of rogue. He's doing it all on his own, and he's got a whole lot of different areas he's covering rather than a direction.
Yeah, and that's a really good word. He's gone rogue. Because on the one hand, Achish, when he finds out that David's really not fighting with him, what's Achish going to do about that? Oh, that's not going to go well. And what if Israel hears you're fighting with the Philistines? So it's like he's playing both sides. I'm not really fighting with the Philistines. Hey, Philistines, I'm with you. But not really. But don't let them know that. And so it's kind of like, and what happens when you do that long enough? It's going to catch up with you. And it happens. It's not in this chapter. I told Regina at some point in the lesson, I'm going to have to say this, and I'm going to do it right now. Hollywood has nothing on the author of 1 Samuel. I mean, this book, it just draws you in, and we're getting to a cliffhanger here in a moment, and then he's going to leave it. We get to, this is chapter 27, but I want to add verses 1 and 2 of chapter 28 because they kind of go with it. When you get to verse 2 of chapter 28, it's like, what's next? And then he stops. And he goes to something else. You know, just like these TV shows today, they've got 3 or 4 storylines going on. And you got one, you get to a real place, and then you stop and go to something else. It's like, what's going on there? You know why they do that. So you'll watch next week, right? The author of the book of 1 Samuel is doing the same thing. You can't quit reading. You got to know what's going to come next. And David is, it's like the net is closing around him. Calvin?
Achish accept Saul, I don't know if that's the right word, because when you look at the thing that I look at when David was in Gath and Goliath was of Gath, they knew David had something going for him.
Mm-hmm.
And so they wanted him from their side, right?
Yes, yes. It's,
David sweet-talked Achish is what I
don't you think so?
because, you know, he just, it's, you know, Achish didn't have any intelligence anywhere around. He depended on David. So,
Mhm.
well, where did you go?
Mhm.
Who'd you raid today?
Okay, yeah.
That kind of thing. And Achish was dumb. That's what he was.
Go to chapter 28 and verse 2 for a moment.
Even verse 12, so it gives the idea of how Achish, where he's at. He's thinking David's fighting on people or messing with his own tribe.
Exactly, yeah.
Achish thinks he's just making his own people up.
Yes. Like David has turned against Judah. He is now with us. And he's fighting. It's exactly what verse 12 says. So Achish gathers the Philistines together to fight with Israel. And Achish says to David, you assuredly know that you will go out with me to battle, you and your men. All right, so everything's going real well. All the problems have been solved. And now, David, you're going to go with me and fight against Israel.
And then David tells him in verse 2, surely you know what your servant can do. He's not saying, I will do, or whatever. You know what I can do.
You're beginning to see through him, aren't you? Yeah. That's kind of double talk. You're about to see what I can do. Well, Achish can take that one way. David can mean it a different way. But this is the phrase I want you to notice. So Achish said to David, this is in verse 2, therefore I will make you one of my chief guardians forever. Chief guardian doesn't give the exact word. What he said is, you will have and protect my head. Now, it's kind of ironic, is it not, that here is a Philistine saying to David, you will have my head. He had one already. He had the head of Goliath. Yeah, and Achish maybe didn't realize what he was actually saying. But all of this goes back to Proverbs 14:12. David's worked all this out. I mean, he's got it all figured out, and this will work, and I can do this will work. But the more and more he does, the less and less room he has to move. And now here he is. Achish is telling him, you're going to fight with me against Israel. And that's where the writer of 1 Samuel ends. Next, he's going to talk about Saul going to the medium or the witch to try to find out what he needs to do, because Samuel's not there to ask anymore, so he's going to go find Samuel, and the only way to find him is go to a witch, and she can bring him up. And again, Hollywood has nothing on this. There's a movie a few years ago about somebody doing that, and it was already here in the book of 1 Samuel. All right. A couple of things about the chapter. Let me go back now to these words. David has been trusting in David, not trusting in God. And it's got him in trouble. He's used his own wisdom, and it appeared to work, but the ends thereof, according to Proverbs 14:12, will end in death. As a result, David is in need of grace, just like every other person is in need of grace. One of the things that may be going on in this part of the book of 1 Samuel is that God, through the book, is telling us not to engage in hero worship. I said something last week about the Bible characters, or the people that we read about in the Bible, that a lot of times we kind of make them two-dimensional. That Saul, he's bad. David, he's good. Well, was Saul bad? Yeah, did he have some good qualities? He sure did. Did he accomplish some things that were good? Yes, he did. Was David a good person? Well, normally we think that, but did he do some bad things? Yeah, he did. And it's not just in one instance or another. Here you see some one after another decisions that he made that bring horrible consequences to him. And so David is a human being in need of the grace of God just like anybody else. And compromise is always going to create consequences that have to be dealt with. And that's what he's doing here in this passage. But over all of that, or maybe I should say it this way, despite what David has done, and despite what Saul has done, God's purpose remains intact. And what God is working to bring about, He is going to bring about. It's not that God has to have the perfect specimen to be able to bring about his purposes. I mean, we could look at 1 Samuel that way. The people want a king. And so God says, all right, you've rejected me, I'll give you a king. I'll just show you what you're asking for is the wrong thing. And he gives them Saul. And one thing after another, everything Saul does is horrible. So God can say, see, I told you so. But you know that's not the story. Saul starts out good. He starts out with lofty things, but he descends into disobedience and unfaithfulness. And so now God can give them a man after his own heart. And so here's David. And if we have the idea that everything David does is wonderful, everything he touches is golden, we miss the point. God can use whatever servant there is. He can use whatever he has at his disposal to bring about his will. And while David ultimately is the man after God's own heart, and you see it over and over and over, he's still a man after God's own heart. And men fail. Men sin. And men are in need of God's grace. And so here is a very far more complicated story than this is good and this is bad. Because your life is that way too, isn't it? And my life is that way. And not everything that we do is good and not everything that we do is bad. But in the midst of all of that, if we trust in God and we seek his wisdom and we position ourselves where we can receive his grace, then like David, we can be used by him to help bring about his will. Now, in all of those things, there are a lot of things that you might bring up, talk about, or question. Anything you want to add to that or questions you want to raise? Not any. All right. Now, that brings us into chapter 27, into chapter 28. When you look at the rest of 28, this is where Saul consults the medium. When we come into chapter 29, we get back to David and find out what happens now after Achish says, you will fight with me. And we see how that works out. And then ultimately, you have 2 chapters after that where David goes against the Amalekites and then Saul is killed in battle. This kind of transitions, where we are right now, transitions into the rest of the book. And it shows us how God is still in charge. God is still in control of what's going on. And he will bring about what he has said he would bring about and what he desires. David's fear, I'm going to perish at the hands of Saul, led him to compromise. That compromise put him in a very difficult situation. But God is still in charge of the story and is still going to be able to bring him home if he turns and recognizes that I need God's guidance. So with that in mind, when we get to chapter 28, Saul is seeking guidance. He's seeking wrong. You know, he's already put himself in a position where God is not going to give him any direction. And you see the lengths that he's willing to go to try to find something. Chapter 29, then, David will seek direction, but he has turned his attention back, and he wants to know what God's guidance is. And is it verse maybe it's in chapter 30, where David, chapter 30, he tells Abiathar, bring the ephod. This is where they use that to seek what God wants them to know. So what you're seeing in the latter part of 1 Samuel, here's David, here's Saul. Here's David, here's Saul. Here's a contrast between the two, and ultimately how God is able to use David to bring about his will. All right. Anything, David?
Is there any that we know of from any of the other prophets or the Kings and Chronicles? Is there any indication of there being a prophet between Samuel and I guess Nathan not considered a prophet?
Nathan is a prophet, yeah.
Is there any mention of any prophet between them? Because that's a, I mean, it seems like a big gap of not having a person mentioned as being a spokesperson for God, I guess you could say.
Yeah, that was Saul's fault. I can't think of one. That's not to say there's not.
I mean, there was one read ahead.
Yeah.
And I'm sitting there going, wow, there's no mention. And of course, Kings and Chronicles, a lot of the prophets are mixed in, obviously.
Right, yeah.
But I didn't know whether any of the other prophets, we went through the minor prophets, says, but there's no mention that I've ever seen of anybody else. I just didn't know whether.
Yeah, there are other prophets mentioned. I can't think right now the names or when they were, but that's a good question. As from that point to when you get into 2 Samuel 11, there's Nathan. Were there others? That might be something good to look for. But I like Ruby's statement. That's Saul's fault. He refused to listen, so God said, I'm quit talking. Calvin?
We're not puppets. I think that's the whole, what I get out of this. I'm thinking, man, David, you got God on your side. Why aren't you? But God allows things to happen. He's not going to control my every move. That's up to us.
Right.
And that's sort of what I get out of it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Back then and now.
Mm-hmm. And sitting in a church building in a Bible class, my mind is focused here. What if I get out at work or get out in the real world? What happens then? That's where David is. And, the fact that that happened on that hillside and with Saul, and I took the spear in the water jug, apparently he's forgotten that. Now, I never forget anything, right, that the Bible teaches, but, well, we know that happens with us as well. And that's a good point. We're not puppets. David?
Well, do a shameless plug, I guess, too, for PBS, because it's based on our choices.
Uh-huh.
In different situations, God doesn't dictate. We make those choices, and there's consequences that go with them. It can be good or bad, but God's not controlling us. I think I'm looking forward to all the lessons, with PBS, because I think it helps the young people, the kids, all the way through adults. I think it's a very good subject.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, and that does fit with what we're talking about, because here's a man who made some choices that he's going to have to back up, and there's going to have to be some changes made. All right, next week we'll look at the rest of chapter 28, and Saul consults me. This is one of my more favorite of the passages about Saul in the book 1 Samuel. I look forward to that next week. If you will, take a songbook and turn to number 88. Number 88. Calvin will lead this invitation song in just a few moments. At the close of our service, Roger Garner has our closing prayer. I want to mention some on our sick list tonight that have upcoming surgeries or procedures. Monica Dalrymple, and this is somebody in Regina's family. They live in Tuscumbia, just outside Tuscumbia. Is scheduled to have surgery on the 11th of this month. Start the 11th. They'll also have a follow-up surgery on the 12th to remove a tumor that is on her eardrum. They know already she'll lose hearing in that ear, but very delicate surgery, and so be sure to keep Monica in your prayers as that is coming up next week. Also, Lainey Light. We've mentioned Lainey for a number of years here. She's a young girl that has heart problems. She's having a heart cath at the end of this month on May 22nd for them to determine what they will do further for that. So keep Lainey in your prayers. And these, the Lights are friends of Eric and Amy Lemons. Also, Sonia Swader. This is Vicky's sister-in-law. Will be going to Vanderbilt on the 8th of June for a consultation. She has possibly a need for a liver transplant. So ask that you keep all of these in your prayers. A number of people that are in our bulletin, they're dealing with various things, but keep all of these in your thoughts and prayers. Are there any that we need to add specifically to our sick list tonight? Nana. Okay, Elaine Stockman is undergoing eye surgery tomorrow. Anybody else? All right, not for sick list, but for prayer list. Remind you, we mentioned this Sunday, Jimmy and Pam Clark are in Ghana. They're going to be there for 2 weeks total, so they're about halfway through the first week. Keep them in your prayers while they are there. They're checking on the work of Steve and Candy Taylor, who've been missionaries in Ghana for a number of years. Of course, those of you that may not know this already, Pam is Regina's sister. So we were asked to keep them in your prayers. This Saturday is our benefit dinner for Indian Creek. If you have not yet already ordered a plate and want one, be sure and let me know tonight. You can let me know in the days that are coming, but it would help if we knew in the next day or so how many we need to prepare. And just let me go ahead and say thank you so much to all of you that are supporting the camp in this way. We appreciate it so much. And again, we solicit your prayers for the work at Indian Creek this summer. Other things we have coming up on the 16th of May, that's a week from Saturday, we'll be putting together homeless meals. Also, there is the Wipe Out Hunger event at Priceville High School on that same day. If you are planning to participate in that, there is a list on the youth bulletin board that you need to sign up there, and do so as soon as you can if you know you want to be a part of that. Also, on May the 30th, the youth group will be going on a bowling outing. Information is on the bulletin board concerning that. And our Vacation Bible School coming up in June. If you'd like a t-shirt that is connected with the theme, there is a list on the main bulletin board in the foyer. Be sure to sign up there and put your shirt size so that those can be prepared ahead of time. I've got one other announcement tonight. This has to do with preacher and his family at the Antioch Church of Christ in Sneed, just south of us. Tim is the preacher there. His wife Tammy passed away on Monday of this week, and her funeral will be on Saturday. Please keep that family in that congregation in your prayers. She was 59 years old, suffered a heart attack and passed away. So keep Tim, Roland, and his family in your prayers, the passing of his wife. The invitation song selected tonight says that Jesus paid it all. That's an easy statement to make, but the implications of that statement are significant. Jesus paid it all. it doesn't matter how much you have or what it is that you perceive to be of value that you have. It's worthless when it comes to the price of sin. Jesus paid it all. And he is the only one who could have paid that price. If everybody in this building tonight were to amass everything we have of value together, it would be worthless when it comes to paying the price of sin. If every human being on the face of the planet were able to do that, it would be no closer to being able to pay the price. Only Christ could pay the price. And so we're going to sing the words, Jesus paid it all. All to him I owe. Because he paid that debt that I could not pay. I owe him a debt that would never be repaid. When we sing these words tonight, give thought to the fact of what God has done for you. He was not obligated to do so. He does not increase his holdings in any way other than he gives his creation an opportunity to be in his presence in eternity. As we sing the song tonight, be grateful for the fact that Jesus paid it all. And then look in your heart and life and ask the question, am I responding to him in the way that I should? And if there's some change you need to make so that your response to him is what it ought to be, that opportunity is yours. If you need to come tonight, I want you to do it right now while we stand, while we sing.
I hear the Savior say, thy strength indeed is small. Child of weakness, watch and pray. Find in me thine all in all. Jesus paid it all to him I owe. Sin had left a crimson stain. He washed it white as snow. Lord, now indeed I find thy power and thine alone can change the leper's spots and melt the heart of stone. Jesus paid it all to him I owe. Sin had left a crimson stain. He washed it white as snow. And when before the throne I stand in him complete, I'll lay my trophies down, all down at Jesus' feet. Jesus paid it all to him I owe. Sin had left a crimson stain. He washed it white as snow.
You would please bow with me. Most kind and merciful Heavenly Father, we humbly bow before you now. Thank you for the many blessings that you give us each and every day. We thank you, Father, for allowing us together here this evening, give us opportunity to worship you. Father, we ask that you be with those who are mentioned as being sick or having procedures. We ask, Father, that they will regain their health and these procedures will allow them to go on living a healthy life. We also ask, Father, that you be with those that have lost loved ones, that you will comfort them in the way that only you know they need the most. Father, we ask as we leave here tonight that you will be with us. We will take your word with us in our heart, and we will be an example before those that we meet every day, and that we will make them want to seek you out. In all things, Father, at this time we ask you to keep us safe and bring us back again at the next appointed time. In Christ's name we pray.